All right, so it's day 1, and we're looking at chapters 1 and chapter 3. You know what? Chapter 1, I'm going to leave chapter 1 to you. Like, if you skip chapter 1, it probably wouldn't be the end of the world. But there's not much really to cover in terms of what I feel like I have to teach you. Probably helpful for you to read, give you the overall lay of the land. You'll pick it up pretty quickly, even if you don't read it. But chapter 3, then, is going to be a little bit important to us. So let's spend some time on the concepts from chapter 3. I am going to open up a brand new workbook. I've got my web query homework assignment here. I don't want that one. I'm going to close this. Don't save it. I didn't really do that much work. Oh, I didn't have anything else open, so I got a blank workbook on the file and new blank workbook. So I've got a new blank workbook open. If you just open up Excel for the first time, that's the way that it's going to be. We're in good shape. Now, what I want to do is there a question? I thought I saw him. So we want to make sure that you all have a developer tab. If you do not have the developer tab showing, it doesn't mean you have a defective version of Excel. What it means is that there is so much raw power available with VBA that the good folks at Microsoft said, you know, we better not allow mere mortals to have access to this. And they say, if you can't figure out how to show the developer tab, you don't belong using VBA. That's what it is. We don't want you stumbling. The truth is, the last thing we want is for my mother to record a macro, because there's no telling what might happen. And so, Mom, if you're listening to the video, I love you. See you at dinner Wednesday. So, I'm going to do this. File, Options. And then, where is it? Customize ribbon. So, File, Options, Customize ribbon. So you've got the developer ribbon, it's just not showing. See, it's a little check mark right there. I've already checked mine, so it shows they're checked, but yours looks like that. No check mark on it. Put the check mark on, and you're in good shape. Oh, by the way, April Fool's Day is coming up here during this semester. So, you know, if your buddy leaves his computer open, you might just come in and get rid of his home tab on the ribbon. That home tab's not all that useful anyway. You can just get rid of it. You know, I actually probably shouldn't do that. That would require repenting. That'd be a sin. But, on the other hand, I do encourage repentance, so who knows? I'm a big fan of repentance. Anyway, that'll give you a developer tab. From here, you can now click, the very first choice over here is called Visual Basic. Now, truth of the matter is, the language we're learning here is called what? The Visual Basic for applications. It's a little bit different than Visual Basic. Visual Basic is like VBA's big brother. With the Visual Basic language, I could create a whole application standalone. It just runs in Windows. VBA requires a host application. When I create an application with VBA, it's got to run inside of Excel. So I'm going to open up Excel, and then they can run my program in Excel. Or they can open up Word, or PowerPoint, or Access. There's even some non-Microsoft products that use VBA as the language. Those have to have the host application to run. So why does it say Visual Basic instead of Visual Basic for Applications? Because if it said Visual Basic for Applications, it'd have to be like 2-point font to be able to read it. And then you couldn't read it. And so this is short for Visual Basic for Applications. We take the Visual Basic Editor. And there it is. So sometimes when you first open it, it's like it takes over the full screen. It's like, oh my gosh, what has happened to Excel? Where has the menu gone? Where's the ribbon? Let's see. So yours probably looks a little bit different from mine. You'll only be showing this code here if you happen to have the quotes add-in that I made last semester. Let me get rid of that. Isn't it called quotes in here? Oh, tools. It's called tools. By the end of the semester, we are going to make a modification to the ribbon. We're going to create an add-in. And this was like giving us a quote from Benjamin Franklin. A penny saved is a penny earned. It wasn't so much about what it did, but just the fact that we could make an add-in here. Let me get rid of that. Stand by this. Files, options, add-ins, manage Excel add-ins, quotes. Okay. Actually, now I've got some other code showing. This is from some data analysis toolkit. So some of these add-ins are built in VBA, and if they're built in VBA, it's possible for you just to have access to the code from the add-in. That seems weird. They would do that, but add-ins can be written somewhere besides VBA, but if they are, that's what it is. So if you've got code here, don't worry about it. It's just because you have an add-in. I'm going to come here to where it says book 1, my new VBA project. This is a reference to the workbook that we just opened. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to say insert from the main menu, module. Anytime I want to put VBA code into my workbook so that it stays around after I save and close Excel, it's got to be a module. There are different kinds of modules. We're going to make a general module. It's the one that just looks like a module here. It says module. It looks like a rectangle, kind of a happy rectangle. Well, not so happy, but it's a rectangle. And now I have a module. You can kind of see it here. Let me just zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. So here I've got this project book 1. It's got some sheets. It's got a reference to the worksheet here. It's got a reference to the workbook itself. We'll do some interesting things with these later in the course. But now because I was on that book and I said insert module, I now have this group here called modules, and module 1 is in. So double click that. I'm already there. But that would allow me to just come back and see this particular module. Depending on the way your Excel is configured, you might not be grouped this same way, but you should still be able to say that. You should be able to find that module 1. This is where we'll write code. We want to stick around. We'll write some code here, but we're going to start off in the immediate window. Let me introduce the immediate window to you. The immediate window is a great tool. It allows you to immediately execute one line of VBA code. It's a great place where you can test something out. I wonder what this would do. You can just type in that statement, hit execute, and it just runs that statement. It is really only a debugging tool. You never would use that in production for anything. The last thing you want is your user to come into the Visual Basic environment and do something. Don't do that. Give them a button that will do that for them. So, but let me show you how to do that. As a developer, you want to know this. View, and then immediate window. And that will immediately bring up the immediate window. Yours probably shows at the bottom. The default place it shows at the bottom, but I rearranged this so it would show the top because you can see it better here in the classroom. So this immediate window allows me just to immediately execute one line of code. I can say print. Print. I'm going to print something. What am I going to print? I'm going to print 5. Ooh, and it just printed 5. It's a great code so far. Could print 5 plus 1. What will it print?
6.
Yeah, let's figure out 5 plus 1 and print it. Ooh. I could print now. It reads the date and time and system clock. That's great. I'm printing things like left and right now. Okay, so this is just to kind of give us somewhere that we can execute some VBA and see what it does. If I hit save and close, whatever was in my immediate window is gone. You can't save. It's just a place where you can play with it. All right, so now we've got to get a little bit familiar with how does this whole VBA thing work. It turns out that back in the 1960s, someone had a great idea. They said, we should make a new kind of programming language called an object-oriented language. And they created, what was the first one? I don't know, Ada or something. But it doesn't really catch on until the mid-'80s with a language called C++. Have you heard of it? You've heard of C++? Yeah. Those are the first really popular object-oriented language that had broad acceptance. And so in the early 90s, when I was a student here, I thought I should take a class in object-oriented programming because I'd heard about it, but I didn't really know what it was. It was really well established by the early 90s. And so I took a class in the hallowed halls of this very building on C++. I think it was probably just called object-oriented programming. And I was sitting in class. I was about 3/4 of the way through the class when I had a sudden realization. It wasn't an epiphany because there was no great truth involved, but I realized I'm like more than halfway through the class. I have no idea what an object is. Probably would have helped if I'd read the book. Probably talked about it in the book, but still, you'd think I would have picked up on what an object is and said, "Oh, class is object-oriented programming." Well, you're in luck because it's day 1. I'm going to tell you what an object is. Are you ready? Ooh, an object is a thing. There you go. It's a thing. Thing-oriented programming. Specifically, it's a thing that we can manipulate through VBA. Let's take a look. You think I can manipulate that cell, H5? Can I manipulate that cell with VBA? Yeah, is it an object? Yeah. How about this column? Is it an object? Yeah. How about this row? Yeah. How about this range right here? Yeah. How about this sheet? Yeah. How about this workbook? Yeah. How about this, the whole Excel, the application itself? Yeah. How about the ribbon? No. ribbon. It's really kind of mind-numbing. They just made the ribbon recently, 2007. It was I guess that's 10 years ago. It seems recent to me. Why they didn't make it so you can manipulate it through VBA? You can manipulate it, but you can't, like, well, the ribbon itself isn't an object, but elements in it. Anyway, there are some things. How about this gray line right here? Not an object. Can't manipulate that. So there are some things we can't manipulate. Anything we can manipulate is an object. Now, the characteristic of an object, think about an object in the sense of the physical world around us. Here's an object. May I use your folder? This is an object. All objects have properties. Someone tell me a property of this object.
Yellow.
Okay, so yeah, it has, so there's the difference here philosophically between what's referred to as a general property or a specific property. General property is color, specific property is yellow, that's okay. They're both properties, this kind of terminology. Now in VBA lingo, we would say the property is color and it has a value of yellow. We've got color property and the value is yellow. If I could manipulate it through VBA, I could just say, change the color property of this notebook to green, and poof, it would just change to green. So that's the idea. So properties. A property is just a value that describes the way an object is. Something that says the way the object is. So here's an example of a property. Instead of printing now, I am going to print. Here's a reference to an object. Active cell. That's an object. Now, to get to a property of it, let's say I want to print the address. It's a property. I'm going to say dot, and it's going to bring up some help. This is kind of nice. Here we got a little bit of help here. Oh, look, right down here, 4 down, there's one called address. I'll hit enter on that. Actually, I have this typed in, and I can be anywhere on the line. When I hit enter, it will execute that line. That's the way I tell the immediate window I want to execute a line of code. I hit enter on the line. And so now, what it's done is it says, okay, you've identified a particular object, and from that object, you specified a property of that object. You've asked for the address property of whatever cell happens to be active. In this case, it's C4. Ooh, that's kind of explosive. I've got to be careful with C4, so let me put it over here on B3. So I'm going to blow up the class on B3. And so that's just, and now this is the same statement here, active cell, but it refers to a different object. Why?
You selected.
Because, yeah, I mean, the way I'm referring to an object, but it depends on which object is actually active in Excel that tells me what the active cell is. By the way, I could specify, there's other ways to specify cells, as you can imagine. I could just specify it by saying cells, kind of the collection of cells. I want the one that's on row 5 on column 12. So that should be L5. Should be the address there. So there's L5. So that's another way to refer to a particular range. I could do it this way. I could say range, and then in quotes, I can say the one I want. I want L22. That's not a capital I, that is a capital L. And there should be no surprise here, that is L22. I mean, that's kind of pointless because I told it the address. I wanted to use the address to refer to it and then asked it for the address. But anyway, there we go. So a property is just a value that describes the way it is. That is one of the fundamental characteristics of an object. Objects have properties. We are going to breathe objects and properties. We're going to eat objects and properties. We're going to sleep. We will probably dream objects and properties while we're doing it. It is fundamental to the way that we work with VBA. Now, there's another characteristic of objects that we'll also get really familiar with. So, what is the property? It's an attribute. It's a value that describes the way the object is. A method is another characteristic of an object. Objects have properties. Objects have methods. A method is something the object knows how to do. Now, when I look at this, before we get to the method, let's just make something clear about everything with VBA. Every statement that we have with VBA has to be an instruction. We are talking to a piece of software that's built into Excel called the VBA interpreter. That VBA interpreter has to look at what we write in VBA and it's got to interpret it. It's got to figure out, what do you want me to do with this? And it's got to figure out how to actually do that. It's got to translate what I wrote in VBA into machine language so it can be executed by the processor. There's some chip in there, you know? It's like a Skylake i7 processor. I don't know what it is in there. And it's got to give instructions to that chip to do something. Well, that's the interpreter. It figures out what we wrote, and it translates it so that it can be an instruction that it can accomplish. The point is, when I'm working with that interpreter, I've got to tell it to do something. Let's suppose I came. Suppose I came to you and I said, say 27. Yeah, he knew what to do with that. It was an instruction. I told you. He looked at that. Now, what if I came up to you and I said 12? What would you do?
Ask what you want done with that?
Yeah, or you might drop the class. This is kind of creepy. He came up to me and he's all 12. I'm out of here. It's not an instruction. And so properties, what's a property? Property is a value that describes the way the object is. A property is a value. A value is not a value is 12. It's not an instruction. So if I come here and I just say range L22 address and I hit enter, what's it going to do? That's me telling the interpreter L22. L22. And it goes, what are you talking about? That is an invalid use of property. You can't do it. I've got to tell it to do something with that. I can say print that, and it knows what to do. You know, I could change the value of it, and I could say the value equals 12, and then if I went and looked at it, here it is, L22 value on the screen down here. So, you know, we can get to it that way. So this is an instruction. This says, you know, put a value somewhere else. So properties are not instructions, but methods are. A method is something the object knows how to do. Watch this. Let's do A3. Now, instead of address, in the backspace over the dot, hit the dot again, it will bring up the help. And, oh, the very first one, activate. It looks a lot like the property. Right? We still say dot, but now it's a method. It's an instruction. But because a method is an instruction, it stands by itself. I can execute this. The method is an instruction. I execute that, and it will activate range A3. Now, it's important to realize that the activate is actually defined as a part of the object. This is not part of the VBA language that we're saying, take the activate part of the language and tell it to operate on this range. No. We are saying, hey, range, there's something built into you that you know how to do. And that's called activate. And I want you to do it. Oh my gosh, we have one more minute to finish this whole exam. And so now I was down here on L22. I'm not sure where I was. But now A3 is the active cell. And so that is properties and methods. And that is where we're going to spend most of our time in VBA, is dealing with objects, properties, and methods. Before we conclude, let's remember, object is a thing. Property is it's a value that describes the way the thing is. I can change properties, and it will change the way the object is. Some properties are read-only, some I can write to. And an object has methods, which are instructions, something the object knows how to do. The object itself knows how to do it. So when I say activate, it's invoking its inner activation method. It knows how to do it. All right, folks, that's it. We will pick up with variables in chapter, whatever chapter that is, when we get together on Wednesday. Class dismissed.